viewers and learners of the Postgraduate Diploma in Environmental and Occupational Health. In this session, we will discuss on Industrial Safety and Management. This forms a part of the course MEVE 004, that is Industrial Sector. Now we all know that industrial safety is very important because it safeguards the human life, especially in very high risk areas. For example, in the nuclear sectors, in the aircraft or the chemical and petroleum industries, in the oil and gas sectors, and also in the mining industries. So in all these cases, even in the iron and steel industries, so here we will see that even one fatal mistake that can be disastrous, it can be catastrophic. So therefore, we have seen a lot of the industrial hazards and safety issues. For example, we have seen this Chernobyl disaster which occurred in the erstwhile USSR in Ukraine. In the same way, we have had the Bhopal gas tragedy which occurred in India, and that was one of the most disastrous industrial hazard and the effect which happened in our country, India. So therefore, industrial safety is very important, and when you are able to manage this properly and when you have taken all the preventive measures, if all the safety systems are working properly, if the proper training is given to all the workers and the employees working there, then it will reduce the risk to the people and also to all the processes that are involved in the factory. Then all these processes, control and the safety systems, these are usually merged, and maintaining a safe and healthy working environment. This is essentially very important in any industrial sector. So therefore, all the employees who are joining, for example, a factory or any industry, let us take for example, if it is an oil or a petroleum industry, or if it is in the manufacture of phenol or any other chemical or other industry, the employees will have to definitely understand the health and the safety risk that is involved in their profession. In the same way, they should also understand the steps that they need to take in order to minimize those risks and the common safety standards and compliance procedures. So they should be up with all these things. That is why a weekly or a fortnightly training is required for the industrial workers. Awareness campaigns are required, because without knowing the proper knowledge, without obtaining the proper skill, if a person starts operating any kind of machinery or the other chemical processes which are involved in a chemical factory, then it is possible that there can be certain risk and certain hazards or explosions which occur due to a very small problem or defect in the system. So they should be able to analyze the problem and solve it at the root level. So the importance of industrial safety, this was first realized because of the fact that every year millions of the occupational as well as industrial accidents occur, and this results in the loss of production time which is equivalent to millions of man hours, machine hours and so on. Now of these, about 1/5 of the production time, this is lost by those who are actually injured due to temporary and also permanent disablement. It is therefore essential to identify and examine the causes of the industrial accidents and take up the steps in order to control them. Many disciplines are concerned with this safety approach. For example, industrial engineering is one such branch, and it is a field which deals with the design of the efficient workspace, the designing the efficient equipments and the industrial layout design. So even the industrial design and engineering controls also play a very important role in the safety management. Other disciplines that can contribute to the safe working environment, that is psychology, sociology and also the Medicare sciences. Let us go on to the history and the development of the safety movement. So safety, if we have to define this is the state of being safe. It is a condition of being protected against the physical, social, financial or other types of consequences of failure, damage, accident, harm or any other event which could be considered non-desirable. In the early 1800s, the employers had little concern for the safety of their workers, and after that the industrial revolution occurred, and this also resulted in the division of labor. Now during this industrial revolution, we found that there were a lot of child labor in the factories. This was a common practice, and also it depended on the long working hours in the factory. So therefore people in Manchester in England, they began demanding better working conditions in the factories due to the outbreak of fever among the children who were working in the cotton mills. In 1802, the Health and the Morals Apprentice Act was passed there, and this was a milestone piece of the legislation, and it marked the beginning of the government involvement in workplace safety. So in this figure also you can see Gesundheit and Arbeit. It shows the children, and it was actually a stamp which came out, and that shows that why the workplace and your health, these are very important. So health at the workplace is a very important factor, and this has certain legislations which are important, and this should be in place. So milestones in the safety movement. Let us see some of them. Now if we have to take in the United States, the hazardous working conditions were the common place. So in 1867, the factory inspection was introduced in Massachusetts. In 1868, the first barrier safeguard was patented there. Then in 1869, the Pennsylvania legislature passed a mine safety law, and that required that there should be 2 exits from one mine so that people are not entrapped within a mine. In the same way, in 1877, the Massachusetts legislature, they passed a law requiring safeguards for the hazardous machinery. In 1900, Frederick Taylor, he began studying the efficiency in manufacturing. And this study was basically to identify the impact of the various factors on efficiency, on productivity, and also on profitability. In 1907, the US Department of the Interior, they created the Bureau of Mines to Industrial Safety to investigate the accidents, examine the health hazards, and make recommendations for improvements. And then from early 1908, the early form of the worker compensation was also introduced in the United States. So that was about the US. So then after that, in 1912 and so on, they started coming up with the Cooperative Safety Congress, and then the electrical engineers from the various steel industries, they took lead in organizing such conferences, and then that resulted in the establishment of the National Safety Council. That was given charter to take responsibility for the prevention of accidents and also the development of the various safety programs. So one of the most vocal components and the proponents of the cooperative approach, he was H.G. Dichter, and he proposed the following objectives of integration. He said that you should learn more through sharing knowledge about the health problems in the workplace, particularly those that are caused by the toxic substances. Then that will actually provide a greater level of expertise in evaluating the health impacts and to analyze the safety problems. Then you should also encourage the accident prevention. Then he also said that make the employee health and safety a high priority. So the industries then they started including newer characteristics in the safety concern, the noise, the dust, the fume, the heat, the mist, and the radiation. All this got incorporated in the rising list of hazards in the industry. Now presently, the occupational health and safety management system, that is being used for all the management in the industries to protect and safeguard the employees from the various risks and the hazards. Safety policy. So a safety policy or health and safety policy or occupational and health policy of an organization, that can be defined as a recognized written statement that states an organization's commitment to the protection of the health and safety of the employees as well as the society in the immediate surrounding neighborhood. Because if there is going to be an industry and if there is going to be some kind of a toxic product or emission which is coming out from the industry, then the neighboring surroundings and the people, they should also not be affected by these toxic fumes. We will see in some of the disastrous cases and the hazards which occurred how industries were established in a densely populated place and how all the people surrounding, they were the poor people, they were also slums over there. So they all got affected by the toxic fumes of these industrial emissions. So therefore the safety policy should take all these things into account. It also shows the details of all the occupational health and safety elements with the policy to protect the employee's life and health up to or surpassing what is required by the laws, regulations and practices in the relevant industry. Now causes of the accident. So in an industry there can be several causes of an accident, And that accident itself, it means that this has occurred suddenly and unexpectedly. Even at home when you're working on the gas, or even if you're ironing your clothes, sometimes an accident can occur, that your hands become unstable and the press falls, or it can even fall on your hands. In the same way, when you're working on the gas stove, some hot water that can actually spill, or if you're working with hot oil, when you're deep frying something, the oil can actually fall on your palm, on your hand, or even on your face. It can spurt when there is a drop of water. So this way, a sudden accident and emergency situation arises. So an accident can be defined as something harmful and it takes place suddenly and unexpectedly. Accidents can be simple injuries and they can also be major injuries, and it can also be fatal and lead to death. Accident is a sudden happening that causes harm to the body. So for an accident, generally we go in for a first aid. That is a first kind of the treatment or an aid a person can rush and give to the victim. So the first aid is a first help that can be given to a person who is injured at any place. It could be the industry, it could be at home, and then you take them to a healthcare or a hospital. That is where you can give them the proper treatment. For example, burns. You can have a chemical industry, and there you can have acids or any chemical which can be toxic, which can actually take away the surface of your skin, the skin's layers. In that case, a sudden, you need to first aid which is to be given, and then after that you take them to the hospital, and then the proper burn treatment is given. So what are the causes of the accidents? It could be because of taking shortcuts, because some people feel that, let me take a shortcut and let me complete my task faster. It also means that you are being overconfident, that you know all the work, you know how to do it, and being overconfident with, starting a machinery. It could be a very sharp instrument, maybe for cutting sheets or anything. That can act when you are overconfident, and sometimes if you don't look into the details properly, it can even cut a portion of your limbs or your hand. And such accidents have occurred in many of the industries which are dealing with the automobile, and so on. Then again, you are starting a task with incomplete instruction. Always when you go into a factory, even when you go into a laboratory, when a teacher is giving you instruction, you hold the burette properly, or hold your pipette properly. Do not put the pipette to your mouth, or take the pipette to your mouth, but use the pipette holder or the bulb in order to take the acid. So there are so many instructions that a teacher or a professor is giving you, but sometimes, without even listening to them, or with incomplete instruction, you have heard that, okay, something has to be mixed and I need to take these things and let me start ahead. In the same way, in the industry, when you go on, you take up a job and you go there, then again you are not listening to the instructions properly, and you start handling a heavy machinery or some kind of, the valve which has to be regulated. Then in that case, that can also lead to an accident. So that is why proper skill is required, proper training is required. The more you study, the more you sharpen your axe, the better skilled you will be and the better professional that you will be at your job. Poor housekeeping, that is another problem. Another problem is ignoring the safety procedures. So whenever you go into a factory, whenever you start your job, or even before starting your job, a day before or even a week before, if it requires planning, you should always know whether the safety protocols are there, whether all the safety conditions are being met with, whether any valve, it is conditioning properly, it is going on proper, it is working, it is in the working condition. In the same way, bulb, illumination, ventilation, outlets, inlets of all your instruments, everything, are they in proper condition? Ignoring the safety procedures, then that can also lead to disastrous results. Mental distractions from work. People have a lot of mental distraction. It may be due to the competition from your peer, or even at home. You have a lot of family problems, family pressures, and then taking all those when you come to your office, when you don't have a sound sleep, then that can also cause certain psychological disturbances, mental distractions from your work. That can also be a barrier to working properly. Failure to pre-plan the work. As I told you, you need to plan your work properly. Even if it is to conduct an experiment, even if it is, how to train your staff, That also, if you have a flow chart, if you have a proper written instruction manual before you, and then you start doing it, when you plan the work, then that will be good, and then you can prevent the accidents. Mark Twain once said that it is better to be careful 100 times than to get killed once. So this statement, I thought it is really very good, and this will open the eyes of many of the people who are working in such sectors. Now, according to the Factories Act of 1948, we can define this as it is an occurrence in an industrial establishment causing bodily injury to a person who makes him unfit to resume his duties in the next 48 hours. So that is what an accident refers to in the Factories Act. An industrial injury, this is defined as a personal injury to an employee which has been caused by an accident or an occupational disease and which arises out of or in the course of employment and which would entitle such an employee to compensation under the Workers' Compensation Act of 1923. Let us now go on to see the type of accidents. Accidents may be of different types. It depends upon the severity, the durability and the degree of the injury. Major accidents. So these are accidents that can cause death or permanent or prolonged disability to the injured employee. Minor accident. This means that there can be a cut and that does not render the employee disabled. External injury, when the employee gets injured with an external signs of that, okay, because you can see the signs. Internal injury, that means you don't see the sign outside, but after some time you will see that your wrist bone is fractured, there can be a hairline fracture and so on, or you will get a sudden bulge or ankle swelling which is internal and immediately it is not reflected after the accident. So these are the internal accidents. When an injury renders an injured employee disabled for a short period, for example a day or a week, then that means it is a temporary accident. It could be a sprain, strain and so on, or various other syndromes. Now on the contrary, making an injury, an industrial safety employee disabled forever, it may be when the hands or the arms are amputated, they are cut, that is called a permanent accident. Disability caused by accident may be partial, it can be total, it can be fatal and it can also be non-fatal. So these are the types of accidents that are encountered in an industrial sector. Causes of the accidents. So the industrial safety experts, they have classified the various causes of accidents into three broad categories. They are the unsafe conditions, the unsafe act and other causes. Let us now see what these are. Under the unsafe conditions, this could be the work related and they are the biggest cause of most of the accidents which occur. So these are associated with defective plants, the tools, equipments and machines which are defective and also the materials that are being used. Such causes are known as technical causes, which are the problems. Improper equipment, defective equipment, faulty layout and location of the plant, inadequate lighting arrangement and ventilation, unsafe storage, inadequate safety devices, all these are other unsafe work conditions. Psychological reasons, for example, working overtime, monotony of doing the same work every day, fatigue, tiredness and also frustration and anxiety due to various other reasons. These are also some causes that can cause accidents due to the personal problems. Unsafe act. Now this may be because of one person. The lack of knowledge of one person can affect the entire factory workers and the employees. So industrial accidents, they occur due to certain acts on the part of the workers. This can be due to the result of lack of knowledge or skill on the part of the worker, operating without any authority, failure to use the safe attire or personal protective equipments, careless throwing of the material at the workplace, working at unsafe speed, that is you are working too fast or you are working too slow. Then using unsafe equipments or the using the equipments unsafely, both these are there. Then also removing the safety devices. Sometimes the safety devices may be costly and they may think that it's fine, maybe we can work even without these devices. So taking such a risk, it should never be practiced. Taking unsafe position under suspended load, you are taking an when you are working with heavy loads and then you are standing at such a position where those loads, it may fall on a person. Distracting by teasing, abusing, quarreling and also daydreaming, thinking of something else when you are working with heavy machinery or something else. So one's own accident prone personality and behavior can also result in such accidents. Other causes. This can arise due to unsafe situational and also climatic variations and conditions. So this includes excessive noise, very high temperature, humid conditions when sweat a lot, bad working conditions, unhealthy environment, the floor can be slippery, excessive glare, dust and fume and also arrogant behavior of the supervisors, the factory supervisors and the dominating supervisors. So that can also irritate the people, the employees working there, and it can result in some disaster. Let us now note some major accidents that have occurred in our country. Bhopal in December 1984. This was the worst chemical disaster that India suffered, and that was a methyl isocyanate gas leak from the Union Carbide plant in the city, in the capital city of Madhya Pradesh, and this killed over 4,000 people and thousands suffered from irreversible health damage, and genetic problems were also seen even 20 years after this accident. So this was the worst chemical disaster that occurred. In Delhi in 1985 December, an oleum gas leak occurred from the Sriram food and fertilizer plant in Delhi, and that severely affected the workers and those living in the neighborhood. Rourkela in December 1985. A blast furnace accident occurred in the Rourkela steel plant and 18 workers were affected in the process. Durgapur in June 1987. Here the chlorine gas leaked at the Durgapur chemical factory, and this created panic all around. Long distance trains were also halted and over 100 people were affected due to this gas leak. Bombay in November 1988. A fire broke at the Bharat Petroleum Refinery at Mahul, that was in northeast Bombay, and this killed around 32 people. In Ramagundam in September 1989, here again a major gas leak at the Fertilizer Corporation of India occurred at the Ramagundam and killed 7. In the same way, Nagothane in November 1990, explosions at the Indian Petrochemicals Nagothane complex occurred, and here 35 persons were killed and over 50 of them suffered 70% burns. Okay, 70%, that means you can understand how much would have been the recovery rate, because even a small amount of burn, even if it is a 30% burn, there is a chance of recovering of the patient, but 70%, you can see that how many of them would have recovered from this incident. Gwalior in December 1991. Blast at the dyeing department of Grasim unit at Gwalior. This again killed 14 people and 22 people were severely injured. Then in Panipat in August 1992, there was an ammonia gas leak at the National Fertilizers plant at Panipat, and this killed 11 and this injured many people. In Kahelgaon in October 1992, there was a boiler explosion in the National Thermal Power Corporation at NTPC, and this killed 11 and several injured. So from these case studies, you have seen that how disastrous, whether even if it is a chlorine gas leak or it is an ammonia leak, or whether there is any explosion at the petrochemicals, you have seen that how many people can be injured in the process, or how many people can even suffer burns. They can be severely injured, and therefore safety is very important. And that is why the people who are joining the factories, they need to be skilled and they need to be at their job. They need to pre-plan their work, and the training and the awareness programs should be constantly conducted in such industrial organizations, so that the employees, workers, safety concern is kept as a prime aspect. I hope you have had a good understanding of this session. Thank you for your patient listening.